since I woke up after that surgery, I have not had a single ounce of back pain since. And that has been absolutely incredible.
On our last episode, we talked about the risks of pushing through pain. And in today's conversation, we're going to hear from a patient who did not just push through it, he pushed for answers. Nick Maroulis lives in Chicago. He is a partner at a CPA firm, and he has always been the kind of guy who keeps moving. He's an athlete at heart. He spends as little time at a desk as possible, and he's about to become a first time dad. Whoop, whoop. Nick, we're so happy you're joining us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me.
Your story is really a fascinating one. It just raises this question of what happens when patients either aren't told all of their options at the beginning, or they just have to go on this journey to discover them and advocate for themselves. So we're just so happy that you're here to talk about it. Let's start with your back and kind of at the beginning. Um,
Hmm.
where did you grow up? How active have you always been? Was back pain there?
Yeah,
Wasn't there as a kid, it came along later, yeah?
it did. It did. Yeah. The back pain really started, towards the end of my high school years and really my senior year. I had injured it in a weightlifting accident, and it kind of healed correctly, but then throughout the first couple of years of college, there'd be recurring, sciatica pain, and I really started to notice it, the more intense pain, towards the end of college. And when I started working after graduating, it led to my first surgery, discectomy in 2006.
Okay,
So
talk about what your life was like before that surgery. I mean,
yeah,
how active and athletic are you? Like, tell us a little bit
yeah.
about what brings you happiness in life.
Absolutely, yeah. So very active, very athletic. My brother and I have a twin brother, and we participated in a variety of sports, and really just always enjoyed being active. Love, in the summer hiking, swimming, biking, in the winter skiing, and it became very disruptive when I started to have enough pain that I wasn't able to do some of those activities. So
Especially because
the
it happened at such an early age for
Oh,
you.
absolutely. Yeah.
Were
It, I
you
was,
were you surprised by that?
I was surprised. I was surprised because, the intense pain, and it really, in some ways made me feel a little, shameful, that I was so young, but having these issues, and, it made me question, is my body, up to par? Is there something, a deeper issue here? But, um, it was definitely a challenge having to navigate through the pain.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Hmm.
When you had that first surgery, um, did you think at first you were fixed? You weren't, right? I mean, but
Yeah, I mean, it did help relieve the pain, and I, for a number of years, from 2006, really, to 2019, I was pretty good, and things, I was able to be as active. Um, there would be some recurring pain here and there, but for the most part, I was in good shape. I could do what I wanted to do, and do the activities that excited me and that I liked doing. But then it resurfaced, after I continued to be active, and
what were
that
you doing? Were you working out,
you
running,
know
sport?
running was a big thing. I noticed that intense running, not intense, but longer distance running, jogging, would really irritate it. I think I started getting a little, too cavalier with weightlifting too, and tried to go, doing, deadlifts and squats with, too much weight for being in my, late 30s at the time. Um, so I think the combination of those two things, that it was also, leading up to COVID too. I had bought a Peloton, and for some reason, the Peloton really exacerbated pain as well. And I think at that point, things were already kind of, starting to deteriorate again. But those were the main things that really contributed to the pain.
We hear that story from a lot of people that the ways people are trying to stay active during the pandemic and doing things at home, you're not
Yeah,
alone in that, a lot of people ran into problems during that time. At
sure.
what point At what point did it start to get really bad?
So it really started to get bad, kind of towards the end of 2020, for the second time, and really got bad enough to the point where it was hard to walk, and I had this excruciating sciatica pain every time that I did
In
walk.
both legs? Is it in the lower
Really,
back?
it concentrated on my right leg, and it was the right side that was really really hurting, and even putting on a belt, with jeans or pants was a problem, and it really sunk me into somewhat of a depression. It was
How old are you at
affecting.
this point?
So at that point I was about 40 years old.
Okay.
So
And you
about
told me what, you couldn't stand, sit, move, like it really is like
yeah,
everything?
it was terrible. I thought for sure that something was seriously wrong, and it did not get better. I had to go through the process of doing some, PT, and it was terrible. I had a large, I'm moving from one place to another at the time, and it couldn't have been a worse set of circumstances to deal with. The
And
pain,
so you're
yeah,
getting MRIs, they're getting worse and worse.
yeah.
At what point did someone say to you, "Look, sorry, you just need a multi-level fusion"? Like when was that what you were
So
told?
that was after the second discectomy, because unfortunately, the clinic that I had been going to, at the time, they were really just focusing on fixing like the immediate, issue, and there clearly was, in 2020, degeneration and a really bad herniation at the, a different level than my previous surgery. And they wanted to, they didn't really give me too many options other than, hey, we'll do another discectomy, and that should make you feel better. So I did that, and fast forward, 3 4 years later, I started having excruciating pain again, and it was only through after doing a little bit more research myself, and then starting to look into, okay, what are the other options here, that I started exploring, different alternatives to that. But that
People
was
were
it.
telling you initially, was it the first doctor you went to who said it should be a fusion?
So the first doctor who did, yes, who did the first, yeah, the first two discectomies, he was the one who then ultimately, when I started having the same level of pain again around the 2000 2023 time frame, said, yeah, I think the best solution for you is a multi-level fusion.
And your reaction was what?
My reaction, having several family members who have had back fusions, was, scared to death, and I absolutely did not want that. I had known that mobility really becomes an issue, with fusions, especially multi-level, and being able to be active and do the things that I wanted to do. I did not want to have mobility issues, and I did not want to be limited with a fusion, and I hear horror stories and have heard horror stories of people who have had significant issues with getting fusions. So it was absolutely something that was a non-starter for me.
You have been so honest about your journey, which I really appreciate because I think it's going to help so many other people. And you admit that at that time, you didn't even know disc replacement existed, that it was an
Right.
option. And I know you got not just second opinions, but third opinions.
Yeah.
So and this stretches over, this part of the story is like a 2 to 3 year period where you're trying to figure out what else is possible. Kind of give me that overview of how many doctors did you talk to? How long did it take before you first heard the words disc replacement? And how did you
Yeah.
sort of start to figure that out?
Yeah. No, I think you said it perfectly. It took a lot of time, and it was, I think, three separate surgeons that I had to meet with before I really started to understand. Okay, there's this other avenue of disc replacement. Where if you're a good candidate, um, this is an alternative that really is, shown, the data has shown that it could be highly effective.
Did those
You know,
first 3 mention it, or was it the 4th doctor who mentioned it?
so it was, really the third and the fourth. I've learned through this process that certain surgeons and that are affiliated with certain hospitals, they might be much more conservative or just not fully aware or maybe familiar with the practice of some of these disc replacements, so they never bring it up as an alternative. And that was really kind of the issue I dealt with. It's never even raised. None of the earlier surgeons ever told me, hey Nick, that there are some other doctors who have other methods that you might want to at least consider, just so you have a full lens of possibility. I had to learn it on my own. And really, the third and fourth surgeon I eventually spoke with, I finally started understanding that there is this disc replacement procedure. And the more I looked into it, and the more I tried to find doctors who, the surgeon who was very, very well, versed in the disc replacement, and knew how it worked, and could explain it to me well. Then it really opened my eyes, to a whole new, really a whole new light, and I really started becoming focused on that, because it seemed like with the right surgeon, that was, going to really put me in a position of where I wanted to be: active, mobile, and able to do things, while I'm still, relatively young.
You you said something to me, and I wrote it down because I thought it was so just such a great point. You said you were pretty far into this process where you had this important realization one day that different surgeons have different playbooks for the same
Yeah,
diagnosis. I mean, that's a real I don't know how widely understood that is. You would think that if somebody comes in with an issue at a certain place that there's one thing you do, but there's not, right? I
yeah.
mean, that's
That was very eye opening for me, because I always had put my faith into, a surgeon, if I had an issue, and always assumed that surgeon would educate me on different possibilities, different avenues, even if they couldn't, necessarily help with one or more of those avenues. And that wasn't the case. I mean, I literally had to get second, third, fourth opinions to get to the point where I started understanding other options that are available. Um, and it's
how
probably the biggest thing that I'd convey to anyone who's struggling with pain, is that, don't assume that, one particular surgeon will give you all the different options, because it's just not the case.
So how did you find your way to VSI and Dr. Ehsan Jazini?
So through independent research, Googling and
I often hear that people are Googling at like 2 in the morning
oh yeah, oh, I
when the
was
pain
Googling.
is bad and you can't
Lot of late night googling when I was, looking for the right surgeon. But it was very clear that VSI and Dr. Jazini, in particular, was, highly respected with this procedure, highly regarded through the industry, and it was very clear that he was someone that I should talk to. Um, so, through just a couple steps, very easy steps. I mean, I set up a, consultation over Zoom, because I was living in Chicago. The clinic's obviously in Virginia, but it was a great first step and an easy first step, to get on the phone with him. It was within a week I was on the phone.
and the option that he ended up giving you after talking and assessments and all
Hmm.
of those things was a 3-level disc replacement. Um, talk about had anyone else mentioned that? What did you think about it? What was your comfort level with it?
Yeah. So, one other surgeon had mentioned it. The one I'd spoke with before, Dr. Jazini and VSI. And I started to understand that while it might sound aggressive, I had significant deterioration at three different levels, and and there was a significant risk that if I only addressed two of the three or one of the three, that there would be ongoing, complications that could be exacerbated down the road, and I could not be a candidate for a disc replacement down the road. And with that understanding, Dr. Jazini and the BSI clinic, I mean, they were the ones that helped explain it to me in a way that I understood the mechanics, and just how the body could evolve to a way that made it clear 3 levels is what I really should do to achieve the goals that I wanted. And it was comforting to know that like a 3 level procedure. Again, it sounds extreme, but you know, Dr. Jazini and his team. I mean, they do these and they
It's
do
what
them
they
quite
do. It's what
quite
they
quite
do.
often, and having that experience really put me at ease. And kind of further made it clear to me that was the direction I needed to go.
When did you do it?
So I did it in May of 2025.
And I mean, look, at that point, you're in incredible pain. You had been
Hmm.
dealing with pain off and on for half of your life.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and this is a big surgery. How nervous were you going in?
I
I
was
think
very
I would
nervous.
be
Yeah.
nervous.
Yeah, I was very nervous. It obviously any surgery is scary, but to think that you're going to wake up and have 3 artificial discs in your lumbar spine. I mean, that's it's nerve-wracking, but I mean, I will say, you know, the VSI team, Dr. Jazini in particular, couldn't have been more accommodating and helpful in easing my anxiety leading up to that surgery. I mean, even to the point where, he and I, the doctor and I, were texting in the days leading up to the surgery, called him several times on his cell phone. He'd always answer, just to talk through, any kind of last minute concerns I had. And he was very, very helpful. And that was something I had never dealt with before with any doctor, let alone a surgeon. Just the availability and the comforting and leading up to the procedure like that. He assured me I'd be in good hands, and I was.
He's such a good guy. And
Yeah,
look,
yeah,
that human to human thing matters before a big surgery.
it absolutely
You
does.
said what was it like waking up and learning that all 3 levels had been successfully replaced?
I mean, I almost cried. I was so happy. I mean, it was the most exciting moment, of the last, 20 years or so of my life. I mean, it was unbelievable. I was, just elated with joy. That was the best thing, to wake up and hear that successful 3 level procedure was done, and here I am now on the road to recovery.
What was pain like in the early days, and what was it like? What was the healing process like?
Yeah, the healing process, and this was something else that Dr. Jazini and his team, were very honest about, leading up to the procedure. But I never had excruciating pain following this. In fact, I felt really good in the days, after the procedure. The biggest thing that I dealt with, and I knew I was going to deal with, was kind of periodic nerve pain as after so much compression for so many years at 3 different levels, you know, um, elongating those nerves after a disc replacement is just something that naturally you have to go through. So there was periodic nerve pain, not intense pain, but discomfort from time to time as I was going through the first few weeks post surgery. I'd say really after like the first 2 weeks, it generally subsided, and it wasn't ever too intense. Totally worth the effort of going through that, but it was something nonetheless that was part of the process. I knew it was going to be part of the process, and within a couple weeks, it really started calming down, and before I knew it, I was doing PT within 4 weeks, and really getting back into a rhythm, slowly but surely.
All right, and let's talk about life now. Tell me what kind of back pain you have now. Do you still have to take
Yeah.
pain meds? What's life like?
So no, so since I woke up after that surgery, I have not had a single ounce of back pain since. I mean, there was some of the nerve pain that was expected, but I've had zero back pain, and that has
Wow.
been absolutely incredible. I mean, I wasn't able to sit in a chair. I wasn't able to, again, put on a belt without pain radiating, and I've had zero back pain since the surgery. It has been absolutely amazing, absolutely
What
amazing.
What have you been able to get back to doing? You know, you
Yeah.
talked about running, lifting. Are you still
Yep.
doing that stuff? And
I
what else?
am.
Are there things you can do?
Yep, I am. I mean, just went on a ski trip, and day to day, been, jogging, using the stair stepper, using the Peloton, weightlifting, but being careful, just not wanting to, not just my back, but other parts of my body, not wanting to push too much. But I've been, doing everything that I, wanted to do. I'm able to do now, and
You said swimming, golf.
swimming, golf, all of it. It's been absolutely incredible, and I just like feel just extreme generosity every day I wake up, for having made the decision to go forward with it with that Dr. Jazini and his team. It's absolutely incredible. I mean, just how much frustration and like sadness it was causing in my life. um, it almost got to a real like a hopeless state, leading up to that last procedure. But this has just been so transformative. Having zero back pain since the surgery, it's been incredible.
I know you texted him at some point after the surgery and said, "You changed my life." I mean,
Yeah.
um, it's really that big of a deal, huh?
Oh, he is a godsend. It's absolutely changed my life. I never thought that I would, recover with this, with no symptoms and no pain whatsoever. It's some days shocking, and my wife and I joke about it, like, it's crazy for how much pain you go through, a procedure like this, how much help you can get. And, I think if I would have done like a two-level procedure instead of a three, I probably would have had pain. I mean, I don't know, but I probably would have, and that was a concern. Um, so I'm very glad, and very grateful, for the outcome.
Your story is so compelling because you went from not even like from doctor like if you had gone with what the first surgeon said, it would have been a
Yeah.
whole different procedure, a whole different outcome. Um, and
Yep.
so where you ended up is so different from what you even knew was possible in the beginning. And so I wonder what you think about that arc and what you tell other people if they ask you. And for anyone who's listening right now, what
Yep.
do you think is the lesson from your story that you would want them to know or that
Yeah.
you knew at the beginning of your journey?
Yeah. No, I think, it starts with, you have to at least get a second opinion. And I really think that it's beyond just a second opinion. Take some time to research, you know, who are the surgeons out there that are best suited, have the most experience, that they're the most celebrated, for these types of back issues, and at least consult with them. I mean, for how easy it was for me in Chicago to have a Zoom conference with Dr. Jazini and his team. It was super easy within a week, and at least there you could map out and hear, from someone who's really really experienced, what the different options are and what the different risk factors are. I wasn't able to get that through my hospital surgeon here, locally. There it was very hard to get in, see him, and then clearly there's limiting factors that with what capability and experience he had, and having to find that out the hard way, um, was disappointing. But that's the biggest lesson that I've learned, is that you have to force yourself to branch out, do some homework, do a little bit of research, and consult with a more experienced doctor in the process, a surgeon in the process.
Why is it upsetting or frustrating to think that all over the country there are patients likely in very similar positions as you being told, "Hey, here's what you need to do." There's something else that's possible and they don't know. It's not being shared with
Yeah,
them. Um,
it's
when you
terrible.
think about that, yeah, what do you
Yeah, I mean, I empathize with anyone who has to go through that. I went through that, and it's terrible. I think, similar to myself, a lot of people have the assumption that when you go see a surgeon, you will be provided with the full spectrum of possibilities, or options, of how you can heal, how you can deal with whatever ailment you're dealing with. It's just not the case. It's just not the case, and that's was an unfortunate lesson to learn. And I think anyone who's told discectomy is the solution, or any type of fusion is the solution, you got to force yourself to get another opinion, because there are other methods there, and it's not difficult to find the surgeons who have a high degree of specialization in this in this field. And it was not hard to get on the phone and have a Zoom call with Dr. Jazini.
That's the last piece that I want to ask you. When people are in pain, a lot, I mean, look, you can't even put on a belt. So life is
Yeah,
hard.
yeah,
The idea of having to search for answers can feel hard and overwhelming. So that's my last
absolutely.
question to you is there a tip for the person who thinks it feels hard? I don't know. Run it through ChatGPT. I don't know, but was there
Yeah.
anything from your as you're searching for answers? Is it asking for help? Is it, I don't know. Do you have any tips
Well,
that people can
it's
follow
interesting you
along?
mentioned ChatGPT, because I did start using ChatGPT, and that actually was really helpful. I mean, it really kind of helped me break down and analyze all the data that's out there on the web, and compare reviews, for other surgeons, and that was very helpful. So I think that is something that could be done. I would also say that it's really, don't be overwhelmed with the research aspect. It did not take me much time to find a short list of, five very high qualified, back surgeons that deal with, complex issues. And the VSI clinic, kept, showing up time and time again through those searches. And I think, just forcing yourself to do it, and finding, is not overly burdensome. And I think no one should kind of stop searching because they're frustrated. It is not too difficult.
Let's end on a hopeful note. What do you want to, what's the hopeful note that you would share with people about the light at the end of the tunnel?
I think there's definitely solutions to back pain. I'm a living example of it, and God bless the Dr. Jazini and the BSI team. They've changed my life. And it is just incredibly difficult to go through any kind of back pain. I know that I've had three procedures now over many years, and it's there's nothing worse in it. And I could empathize with anyone who's going through it. But hopefully my story gives some confidence to people who are dealing with this. Because I have not had a shred of back pain since my procedure.
Amazing. Nick, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.